Hey there, creatives. Welcome back to Creative Conversations with Gigi Montpierre. Today's episode is going to be a bit different, even more different than last episode. While trying to create episode 3, I had a lot of hurdles, and I hit a wall, emotionally and creatively. I found myself questioning everything, wondering if I was even really cut out for this. I regretted signing up for this. I regretted doing this, putting myself in this position. You'll witness raw clips from those moments. My struggles, my doubts, my fear, and even my tears. Throughout all of it, I had began to realize that I was suffering from something many of us face: imposter syndrome. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into what imposter syndrome is, how it plays tricks on your mind, how it affects you, how it's affected me, and most importantly, ways to work through it and connect with yourself again. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you soon. Hey there, guys. Oh no. Okay. Let me start over. I'm rambling and I'm trying to fix it, but I'm not. It's okay. We'll get back to it. Another 2 hours kind of wasted.
One eternity later.
I'm really waiting for a call back from a counselor because I don't know what to do. I'm regretting ever signing up for this class. I am not built for this. Wasted 2-3 hours trying to record a 20-minute video. Professor McPherson, the UTSA Timely Counseling Center is going to be seeing me for the rest of the semester thanks to you, which is a great thing, but dang. You should have included that in the syllabus. If I cannot be an example of imposter syndrome itself, look.
Take 1,762. Imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, aka imposter phenomenon, is a behavioral health phenomenon described as self-doubt of intellect, skills, or accomplishments among high-achieving individuals. Individuals can't internalize their success and subsequently experience pervasive feelings of self-doubt, anxiety, and depression, and or apprehension of being exposed as a fraud in their work, despite having verifiable and objective evidence of their success. I would sit in front of this camera, start speaking for about maybe 8 minutes or so, 9 minutes or so, and then I kind of trail off because I was too focused on trying to make the podcast conversational, because the topic, creative conversations. I've never made a podcast before. I've never just had to talk to a camera, basically like a presentation for 20 minutes regularly. One time it was a conversation with a friend. The second time I really felt like I was just yapping. This time I'm really trying to be intentional and with a message. I've never done that before. I've done assignments in group settings where maybe I'm speaking 5 to 6 minutes maximum. I've done individual assignments that are probably the same amount of time. But with a podcast, I am capturing your attention with what I have to say for maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes minimum. To some, it seems, okay, just get in front of the camera and talk, just do it. For me, do I even have anything valuable? I'm questioning, is anything that I have to say valuable enough to capture someone's attention for 20 minutes? So as I sat down and I attempted to record, I'm here thinking that if I'm going to be saying something, it better be up to this standard. And if it's not up to this standard, scrap it and start over again until it is. I did that day after day after day. until I worked myself down into tears. There definitely was a bit of PMS thrown in there, just to add context. But the frustration is still genuine in itself. The reaction was just a bit turned up. I'm just a girl. Whenever you're feeling any feelings of self-doubt, unworthiness, or comparison, these are symptoms of imposter syndrome. People that are highly neurotic or people that are, very prone to having anxiety, you're easily prone to having imposter syndrome. If you're a perfectionist, you can definitely deal with imposter syndrome because your definition of perfect is not the same as everyone else's definition of perfect. I know very well that my definition of perfect is not the same as your definition of perfect. And that's okay. Until I'm not able to live up to my own perfect standards. And that's when I feel like an imposter. I feel like a fraud. If I can't even reach my standards of perfect, who in the world am I to even say that I'm worthy of doing anything? That's how imposter syndrome comes into your mind, and you start thinking that you're less than, that you're not worthy enough, that you just happened to make it, you got lucky. You don't feel like you deserve the success of the fruits of your labor. That's how imposter syndrome can make you feel. Imposter syndrome can have someone feeling reluctant to share their work. You're tapping into something new. You're tapping into something creative. You're wanting to turn something that started out as a hobby into a passion, into a career. But at first it was a hobby. It was just something that you were doing for fun. Nobody would take it seriously. But now that you're someone that wants to be taken serious, you're second doubting yourself. You're second guessing yourself. You don't want to share. Because before it was just a hobby. Now you want to be a professional? What? You weren't a professional before. Why should I respect you as a professional now? That's what you're telling yourself. That's what you're assuming the other person is thinking. And imagine you get past that. You get past that and you do put your work out there. You put your work out there and you don't feel like it's enough. You don't feel like it's good enough. You don't feel like it's good enough to be put out there for sale. You don't feel like it's good enough for someone to really enjoy and thoroughly like. Because you're comparing it to maybe greater works of art, greater works of creativity, someone that's doing something better. Like me, whenever I was putting together this podcast, I was thinking about all kinds of different people in their podcast. They have the couches, they have the fake plants in the background, studio lighting. I am doing this on a tripod that I found at the gym lost and found, a ring light that I bought my mother that I have had to put 3 10-pound weights on each leg so it doesn't go flying apart. And I'm using a TV tray to hold up my computer that is my viewfinder, as well as the notes for my cue cards. My definition of a perfect podcast is not going to be happening within this first season of this show. I'm gonna let y'all know that now. A person's early relationship with their parents is something that can affect the symptoms and causes of imposter syndrome. If you grew up with parents that were overprotective and very strict, you could be at a higher risk of suffering from imposter syndrome. Or if you had parents that placed high priorities on achievements, or if you had parents that weren't consistent with how they applauded you or maybe criticized you on certain things, all of that can affect your imposterism. Imposter syndrome can formulate whenever you're different amongst a group. Like within a work setting or a new team setting, you can be different by race, you can be different by age, gender, socioeconomic status. It's really common actually for minorities and women to suffer symptoms of imposter syndrome. Social media can cause imposter syndrome. It really can affect your confidence and your self-esteem when you're seeing people within your same age group living more lavishly than you, or having experiences that you don't have the luxury to experience right now in your stage of life, but at their stage of life you're seeing them be very fruitful in the things that you would want. Having all of that in your face consistently can mess with you, even if you don't intentionally want it to, because you see the similarities with you and this person, but then you don't see the similarities in your lives. That can cause a bit of imposter syndrome. You can feel as if, what are they doing right that I'm doing wrong? When in reality, that's not the situation at all. Before I dive any deeper into this discussion and this topic, I want to clarify that the negative stigma that is placed around having low self-esteem is just people with low self-esteem picking on themselves. It's okay to admit that your self-esteem is low. Not everybody feels high and mighty about themselves at all times. Sometimes people feel it temporarily, sometimes people feel it lifelong. Everyone has gone through having low self-esteem. Anybody that says they never have is lying. So I want to start off by saying, noticing that you have low self-esteem is nothing to be ashamed about. If you're going to stay having low self-esteem after you've noticed, that's all on you. Putting it out there and realizing, hey, you know what? I'm really not that nice to myself. I really don't see myself in the same way that I see people that I admire. I don't give myself the love that I deserve. It's okay to realize that. But then it's your job to change that if you don't like it. Because having low self-esteem and having imposter syndrome, going through the imposter phenomenon, can hold you back from so much. It can hold you out from so much creativity. It can hold you back from so much beauty. It can hold you back from so many wonderful conversations, because you talked yourself out of thinking that you don't belong. Being 100% transparent, imposter syndrome can be extremely suffocating sometimes. It can be light or it can be pretty severe. And it can have you feeling not just inadequate in some of the spaces that you occupy, but it can have you feeling inadequate, period. And when those thoughts start to creep in, I definitely want to share mental resources that are available to you. Whenever I felt as if I was kind of at like the peak of my panic and the peak of me feeling like, why in the world did I sign up for this? This is something that I really needed to finalize my career. This is something that I really need to move forward into the next stage of my life. And my own mind and my own inadequacy is keeping me from doing that. And I started to panic. I started to cry. I started to really just doubt myself so badly that I was concerned. It was something that I never really knew how to confront. I was like, okay, if I don't do this, if I do not get out of my own head, it's going to ruin me. So I reached out to a mental health resource. Whenever I was doing my research on imposter syndrome, I wanted to know about people that were extremely successful that suffered with this, because I want to be extremely successful. I am the firstborn daughter, first generation of an immigrant family. So I place a high bar for myself. So it's like, who else that has obtained this bar level has suffered this mental craziness and phenomenon that I'm experiencing. And the research that I found surprised me. The names that occurred really surprised me. Maya Angelou, civil rights activist, poet, author, actress. She suffered from imposter syndrome. Maya Angelou said she felt like a fraud despite her success. She said, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. This is after book number 11. She's been rewarded for multiple books before 11. She got rewarded enough to make 11 books. And she's still here thinking, they found me out. They're gonna find out that I'm a fraud. Girl, if they didn't find out after book number 5, what do you mean? Tom freaking Hanks, Forrest Gump Tom Hanks, questioned his worth as an actor in his career. He had admitted in a podcast interview on Armchair Expert with Dak Shepard that he was forced to face his imposter syndrome whenever he was working on a film in 2002 with the late Paul Newman. Paul Newman was a silver screen actor. He has passed, rest in peace. But Tom Hanks, I worked on a film with him back in 2002. I don't recall the name. I'll probably put the cover art for the video version. But Tom Hanks worked in this movie with Paul Newman, and being Paul Newman's credible background in film and cinematography, Tom Hanks questioned if he was even worthy of being on the same screen with this man. Tom Hanks is a award-winning actor, questioning his worth because he was in some space with someone that had more accolades. One of the biggest names that popped out to me was David Bowie. David Bowie has left such an impact on the world with his music career and his superstardom and his unique originality of style and music and flair and performance. But David Bowie also suffered from imposter syndrome. In a 1997 interview, he said, I had enormous self-image problems and very low self-esteem, which I hid behind obsessive writing and performing. I was driven to get through life very quickly. I felt so utterly inadequate. I thought the work was the only thing of value. This is David Bowie. Feeling inadequate. Feeling like he had to work himself ragged to prove that his stuff is worth it. Which is admirable that you put in enough amount of hard work to be like, you know what, yeah, I did that. I did that with all my blood, sweat, and tears. But then imagine not thinking your best was still good enough. I'm not Maya Angelou. I'm not Tom Hanks. I'm not David Bowie. I'm not some author, actress, or super pop star. But all the same, seeing how these people who have these amazing achievements feel like they still don't deserve it, it's very understandable for someone that hasn't done anything at the level of those people to feel as if what I'm doing is insignificant. Now that we've talked about what imposter syndrome is, how even the most successful people can suffer from imposter syndrome, and how it is okay to recognize that you're suffering from imposter syndrome, let's get into how we can overcome it. You definitely want to recognize and reframe any negative thoughts. Everybody is a walking sack of skin, blood, and bones. Everybody. despite their background, despite what they've gone through. They're a sack of blood, skin, and bones. When you put things into perspective like that, don't give anyone else the leverage of being more important, more deserving, more favorable than you. Don't disqualify yourself because you think the next person is better. Don't disqualify yourself ever. Reach out to your community. Find other creatives, find a mentorship, find some kind of community or support, even through friends, to talk about how you're feeling. Find people within the spaces that you're wanting to enter. Get yourself into a space of relatability so you can feel more competent in being able to do what you've been wanting to do. It wouldn't fit if we didn't speak about how mindfulness can definitely play a part in how you overcome this. Practice some self-compassion. Practice some self-compassion. You deserve this. Any space that you enter, the universe, God, whoever you look to, sent you into that space for a reason. You are in that space for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Give yourself the same compassion that you would give to a friend who's doubting themselves. Build up your emotional resilience. Like I said, it took me time after time after time to sit down and force myself through this. But guess what? Instead of looking at it as I have to record 20 straight minutes, I looked at it as I'm going to record this segment for 5 minutes. I'm going to record this segment for 6 minutes. I said at the beginning of this podcast that I was familiar with speaking for that amount of time maximum. So I said, how can that work in my favor so I can build up the resilience to get this done, but still be somewhat within what I'm familiar with, to not talk myself out of it. Find a way that works for you. Celebrate the small wins. Look at the journey and not just the end goal. I discovered a whole different way to set up today. I have my phone connected to my computer. I have my microphone as well connected to my computer. I found a way to combine the two. I struggled for hours trying to connect my camera and then have my microphone. But then I was like, okay, let me attempt it with something else. So I didn't give up. That's a win within itself. I didn't give up. I brought out a new tool. I learned how to play around with my lighting to make it more flattering for my skin tone. I'm probably going to learn how to color grade after this. Celebrate things like that. Instead of looking at, okay, look, this is how this is going to be judged. I didn't like how this came out. Let the accomplishments outweigh the preconceived negative thoughts that you're even trying to muster up. At the peak of me realizing that I was having imposter syndrome, I was having kind of an existential crisis. For anyone that's not familiar with my academic journey, I graduated from high school in 2017. I am now a senior in 2024. That's 7 years. Normally, traditionally, someone finishes their undergrad in 4 years. But a pandemic, not being prepared, mental health, so many different factors led to me being a senior in 2024. And when it came down to me taking this course is one of the last courses that I need in order to finish my concentration. And me feeling as if, wow, I can't even get through a video required for me to graduate. Do I even deserve to graduate? I'm going to ruin my own life by being insecure. I'm going to ruin my own life by having low self-esteem. It really started to panic and set in that I am my own worst enemy in this moment right now. And whenever I started having that negative self-talk, I knew I needed to talk to somebody, because I was starting to do me versus me. So if ever you feel like you really need that more intimate, significant help, don't hesitate to reach out to any mental health resources. UTSA provides mental health resources, and I was also able to connect to some with my job that brought me into the space now that I'm like, you know what, I can do this. I will share the links to those sources below. I also share links to them on the screen. Imposter syndrome can have many sources, reasons, and causes. But despite them all, there are ways to overcome it with filling yourself with compassion, building up the emotional resilience, and being able to acknowledge and work through the faults. Like I said, everyone is a walking bag of skin, blood, and bones. Whenever you strip that down and look at it from that perspective, you'll occupy more space. That is all for today's podcast. I definitely want to say thank you to everyone that has been patient with me in the gap of my episodes. I am learning myself and I'm not done. I'm definitely a work in progress. So is this podcast. And anybody that feels like they're suffering from imposter syndrome, whether it comes from any of the causes, reasons that listed in this video or anything outstanding, hopefully you can use this video as a resource and a way to overcome it, a way to know that you're not alone, a way to know that there are definitely other great, successful people that have had the same mindset but have been able to push through and still have their accolades. Like I said, everyone is just a walking bag of skin, blood, and bones. Take up space. You deserve to be in that space. Be creative, stay mindful, and until next time, have a good one.